Yo, what is going on, YouTubers? I know there's been a ton of tech news to report on recently, but unfortunately I've just been too busy to cover it. I blame everybody else, of course, and accept no responsibility. But anyways, I'm not going to let that chaos hold me down forever. So today I'm back to bring you guys my look at my top 5 games coming out really soon. And these are all games I'm really excited about for one reason or another. And I'll tell you guys a little bit about why that is. Also, I'll give you guys some information about the games for PC and for consoles, release dates, any beta or early access opportunities, as well as the system specs if they're available to make these games look as pretty as possible. So with that being said, topics, shortcuts, links, and information are below. Now let's get this party started. So first out of the gate is a couple of first-person shooters from EA that have two very distinct personalities. Due out just next month is Titanfall 2, coming on the 28th to PlayStation 4 and a week earlier on Xbox and PC via EA or Origin Access. And I've got to say, I played this game on the first Xbox One as well as the PC, and I really just ended up preferring the game on Xbox. I know that may sound weird to some of my PC people out there, but it just felt like a great couch game and experience, and one that I really wanted to show off in my living room, calling in a mech and watching it drop down on the big screen with my full 5.1 surround sound screaming was just awesome. And of course, Xbox Live was holding it down with dedicated servers, as usual, which I'm all about. Now apparently they will be keeping dedicated servers on all platforms this time around, even on PlayStation, which has got to be a first for those guys. But of course, Sony isn't going to chip in for those servers. But fortunately for them, the developers are going to cover the cost of these dedicated servers, which should keep play fluid and fair regardless of platform, which is just awesome. So EA have also released system specs required for this game. You know, this mech versus man wall running bot hacking mashup for the PC, and they look pretty reasonable. They're recommending a minimum spec of just a dual core i3 and basically any recent video card with 2 GB or more of RAM, which again should mean a lot of people get to enjoy this game on both console platforms this time as well as on the PC. So should be an enjoyable title. And if you really want to crank up these settings on your PC, and I don't know why you wouldn't, you are going to need some more serious hardware, obviously. But EA are saying it's possible to achieve 4K 60 FPS on ultra settings. Obviously, you will need a higher-end Core i7 and a GTX 1080 to pull that off, which won't be cheap. But honestly, if they can pull that off, even with that hardware, I'll be pretty impressed. Not a lot of games these days are actually hitting a consistent 60 FPS at 4K in max settings, so we'll see about that. As far as some other features go available to the PC people out there, this game will run at up to 144 frames per second, or hertz, depending on what your monitor settings are, obviously, and support ultra-wide gaming monitors, which is really nice to see. That 21:9 aspect ratio is just sweet, and the extra visibility to your sides makes a massive difference in my opinion. I've been running 3 monitors, as you guys know, for a long time now, and I just love the extra wide field of vision. And if developers keep implementing this ultra widescreen support into their games, I may consider updating. I wouldn't say upgrading, but updating my experience on my desktop to just one of those massive screens. But for the time being, I feel like the 48:9 aspect ratio offered, by 3 16:9 monitors versus a single 21:9 is just wider, and it's also more widely supported. But it just is. Most games support, quote unquote surround mode via 3 monitors or even 2 monitors, which is a little bit weird. But 3 monitors just looks absolutely freaking crazy when you're flying something in particular. In certain scenarios, just gives you a lot better, kind of feel for the world. You get a lot more kind of ambient atmosphere, and definitely you can kind of perceive what's going on around you a lot better, at least in my experience. So anyway, also coming from EA, due even sooner than Titanfall 2, is of course the brand new Battlefield 1. And now, I've always loved the Battlefield series, and I'm super excited to see this World War I take come alive. The beta was fun as hell, even though it only had one map, which should say something about the game. So I wish this were a Play Anywhere title, like what Microsoft is doing. I could buy this game on the Xbox or the PC and play it on both, no matter where I was, with cloud saves and crossplay. That'd be fantastic. But of course, that's not going to happen with EA. So they'll just get their, $120 out of me for the season pass on both platforms, more than likely, which they always do, those greedy bastards. But I'll have to deal with it. If I have to choose, because there's just all these games coming out, I probably will buy this game on the PC and play it on those 3 screens, glued to my keyboard. But this game is due out on all 3 platforms, PlayStation included, on October 21st, and will be available, of course, a week earlier than that on Xbox or PC via EA's early access programs, EA Access or Origin Access, starting on the 13th. EA have also listed system requirements for this game as well, and even though I very much doubt this game will ship with DirectX 12 support, because I used that API in the beta and it was an absolute mess. So I doubt that'll ship at launch with this game, but they have released the required system specs for DirectX 11 and 11.1. So they are as follows. You will need a 6-core AMD FX processor or an Intel Core i5 with a pretty good clock speed here, so just to get into the game is going to be a pretty steep requirement there for a minimum spec CPU, and may limit the player base pretty substantially in my opinion, although I'm sure it's going to benefit the game in terms of just amount of stuff going on. Having those more powerful CPUs being required can really let them turn up the atmosphere, and like I say, the amount of things going on in the game world is really where that CPU comes into play. And GPU wise, the same 2GB or more, any recent memory, Radeon or GeForce cards required, just like for Titanfall 2, should do the trick here as well. Something interesting and a transition we're already seeing more of lately is that developers and GPU manufacturers really are pushing to optimize for the latest generation of graphics cards already, which will continue surely, and that is again the case here. EA have stated that the recommended specs for quote-unquote optimal quality in this game include an 8350 on AMD side and a 4790 i7 from Intel, or better, but those are to include or be accompanied by an RX 480 or a GTX 1060. So again, it's likely that all of these games coming out from now on, you're going to see that the developers and the GPU manufacturers with their drivers, etc., are going to optimize for these newer games out of the gate for their very latest generation of hardware, and those guys will basically get to optimizing for the older architectures kind of whenever they get to it. And the reason for that is, honestly guys, is that, these newer GPUs are really the ones in the spotlight right now, really the ones being looked at and kind of scrutinized by consumers looking to buy new GPUs, and just the press, all the media coverage, etc., is really on those chips right now. So that's where they're going to focus. If you have older hardware, hopefully they will optimize for those platforms eventually, but I wouldn't expect it out of the gate necessarily moving forward. And I have a Maxwell-based 980 Ti myself, so believe me, with games using Vulkan recently and even DX12, I completely empathize with anyone else running older hardware aside from a Pascal or Polaris-based GPU. So aside from that, EA still haven't confirmed exactly what quote-unquote optimal quality means, or what these cards and CPUs will deliver in terms of resolution, graphics settings, or frame rates, but I'd expect that using recommended hardware will give you at least 1080p 60 FPS on ultra settings, and go up from there depending on how beefy your rig is. Once again, PC players can expect some extra bells and whistles if you have the hardware to play with graphical options like extended resolution scaling, having higher than native resolution frame buffer rendering with things like DSR and VSR, depending on AMD or nVidia. This game will be able to challenge pretty much any CPU, GPU, or multiples of those you can throw into a box for the foreseeable future. I will say, however, at least during the open beta, I didn't see really any difference whatsoever going from medium even all the way up to ultra settings. So we'll have to see when this game actually comes to retail if that was just kind of a bug that was faulty in the beta, which again, it's a beta, it's a work in progress, so that certainly could have been the case. But we'll have to see, when this hits store shelves and hits the internet in its final form, what kind of performance and fidelity trade-offs can we see in the full release of this game in just a couple of weeks. So either way, I had a blast again playing the beta in the World War I setting. Really looking forward to this game in just a little bit of time, so can't wait for that. As I said before, I don't expect to see DirectX 12 make its way out with this title at launch, but rest assured this next generation API is coming, and it's going to do so in grandiose fashion with a full feature set in the upcoming PC exclusive Civilization 6. Now, I don't play a whole lot of RTS games anymore. It is a category that I do occasionally enjoy with titles like StarCraft and Halo Wars, but to be honest, gameplay really isn't my primary reason of interest for this game. Even though it does look like it's going to be a good bit of fun, this is really the game that everyone in the PC world is kind of talking about right now, and it's got them excited once again about things like asynchronous compute, explicit multi-adapter, and other features of DirectX 12 that are going to enable some really cool scenarios and rendering techniques. Stuff like running an AMD card right alongside an nVidia card, with those two operating in tandem, cooperatively, however you want to put it, to just gang up and render the scene as best as possible. So I can't wait to see how that works, especially with cards like the GTX 1060, which do not have native SLI support. Can those cards operate in tandem in the future with good results? And how will that compare to traditional SLI that uses a physical bridge? So looking forward to seeing that. This title should also provide us with another much needed standardized benchmarking tool to help us compare all of the latest GPUs and CPUs with a consistent test and all of the various options to let us really push Microsoft's latest API and these newer pieces of hardware and see where that gets us in terms of performance. Is going to be pretty exciting in my opinion, so I can't wait for that, and hopefully the game is pretty fun along the way as well, so we'll see. But emphasis really in this title, of course, is on that next generation API and new rendering techniques, and although that is the case, system requirements remain very accessible and only include a modest dual-core i3 or Phenom 2, 4GB of RAM, and a 1GB video card. The specs are a little bit more robust, obviously, for recommended settings, asking for an Intel Core i5 or an 8350, 8GB of RAM, and 2GB on the video card. But all in all, this game should be very accessible to the vast majority of PC players out there. You should have this hardware to run this game, and this game should obviously have a ton of room to scale up depending on your hardware. Hopefully it will provide us with a great tool to kind of gauge performance for hardware and software in the future as well. So up next is another game in a long-standing series that I don't really care about benchmarking. And frankly, I haven't even been following this series for quite some time, years even. But I'm talking about Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, as you can see on your screen. And for the first time in a long time, I'm actually excited about this series, this game, this holiday. Probably due to the fact that it's really the only AAA futuristic shooter coming out this winter, which is pretty rare. As you guys know, most of these games are on that futuristic bandwagon these days, but I've been following these game trailers and watching these things since E3 for this game, and I know the initial E3 trailer received quite a bit of hate, and I'll be honest, I probably gave it a thumbs down myself at the time because Battlefield 1 just looked so badass and was something different and fresh. But this game stuck to the futuristic setting, and it just looks badass to me. I've never seen a game where you can take off on the ground, at least one this detailed. I know there's stuff like No Man's Sky or, No Man's Cry, depending on your rating of that game, but I've never seen a game, AAA like this, in a first-person shooter where you can actually hop into an aircraft, or a spacecraft in this case, and take off the ground and shoot up through the atmosphere right into a space battle. So that just looks sick to me. But this game is due out November 4th, a little bit after the other games come out, with a closed pre-order only beta scheduled to hit right around the time that Battlefield 1 and Civ 6 come out, on the 21st for PlayStation, and the 14th if you're on Xbox. I'm sorry, that's the other way around. But they're going to skip out on any beta for the PC whatsoever, which is just BS. And I really hope it doesn't mean that these guys are still working on the PC version, and they're going to use the initial batch of people who buy that game as kind of beta testers. I'm looking at UEA, you guys do this all the time. It's like the game comes out and the servers are absolute crap for a week, and even though they did put out a beta test for Battlefield 1, it just feels like all these developers nowadays are kind of using us PC players as like second-rate customers almost, and I just don't want to see that happen with this title as well. I hope it's not the case. I have my fingers crossed for the best, but we'll have to see how that goes for PC players, and hopefully it's better than I think it's going to be. As far as system requirements go, this game will need a dual-core i3 with hyper-threading or a quad-core Phenom 2 just to get off the ground, along with the GeForce 470 or Radeon 6970, so no big deal there on the GPU side. But it will require 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is kind of odd, but of course, if they needed only 4, they would have said that. Anyway, that's what you're going to require to get in the game, and to get this game looking its very best, you will need some extra oomph, but nothing crazy it seems, with recommendations for high settings being an i7-4790 or an AMD 8350. Pair that with a GTX 970 or R9 390, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and you should be good to go, unless you plan on pushing a whole lot of pixels, 4K or 3 ultra-wide screens or something nuts like that, in which case the 970 with its 3.25 gigabytes of RAM isn't going to be adequate for those high resolutions. Speaking of which, if you guys have not gotten your $30 from nVidia yet, that link can be found below. Go get that money and put it toward whatever game you like. It might even get you a full game on the PC because the games are cheaper on there, obviously, which is just one more benefit of being a PC gamer. But hey. Now, this last game on the list is not so much about PC elitism as it is about bringing consumers, regardless of the platform they're on, the two it's available on anyway, the absolute best value and features ever. So I'm a massive fan of this. It's the mother of all co-op games in my opinion. It's that chainsawing, curb-stomping, good time machine, and it's back once again with Unreal Engine 4 powering Gears of War 4. Now, from everything I've read about people's initial impressions of this game, it looks like this game is going to be another knock out of the park for the series, releasing in just 2 weeks' time on Xbox and PC as another one of Microsoft's new Play Anywhere titles. This game will be a buy it once, play it on whatever box you like, wherever you like, giving you the license for any Windows 10 PC and any Xbox console, no matter where you are, which is just fantastic for one price. So thank God for that. I can save some money on that situation and play with my friends wherever I may be. It'll have cross-platform private match multiplayer, cross-platform campaign co-op, cloud saves that go with you no matter where you are, and a ton of graphics features for PC players that will just melt people's eyeballs. I've done several videos on this game now, as well as the beta, so check those out for details if you want, but just a brief overview of what this game will offer in terms of graphics. This game is going to support all kinds of cool stuff that have never been supported before by a title using UWP, so hopefully this is something to come in the future for all Play Anywhere titles. That would be amazing. This game will feature FreeSync and G-Sync. It'll support ultra widescreen monitors, 4K resolution and textures, nVidia CUDA acceleration for certain particle effects, and more. Now, this game will come out on Xbox One at 1080p 60 FPS in multiplayer and 1080p 30 FPS in campaign, with the addition of HDR and 4K upscaling on the Xbox One S, and they have promised native 4K support for this game on Xbox Scorpio later next year, which should look astonishing for a box in your living room. Anyway, even matching the settings on the original Xbox One in this game isn't going to be as easy as some people might think on the PC. The developer says the minimum requirements just to hop into Gears 4 at all are going to include an Intel Core i5 or a 6-core AMD CPU, which again may turn some people off with lower system specs, but on the GPU side it does seem very reasonable, with the developer only asking for a GeForce 750 Ti, 8GB of RAM, and those specs will obviously have to go up for ultra settings and higher resolutions. Those are going to include an i7-4790 or a highly clocked AMD 8-core part in the 9590. So this will likely use any CPU power you can throw at it, along with a GeForce 1080 or Radeon Fury X and 16GB of RAM on the memory side. This is going to be obviously heavily optimized for Microsoft's console and will require a decent CPU to run on the PC. But if you've got the juice, this game should look damn pretty on a PC that has the chops. And either way and on either platform, I cannot wait to chainsaw some of you dudes and ladies into 2 pieces, knock off your heads with the butt of my gun, and get to curb stomping real soon. So anyway guys, these are just a few of the games I'm looking forward to playing here in the near future. And obviously there are going to be a ton more games coming down the pipeline here this winter in the typical monsoon of releases known as the holiday season. But I can't buy them all, and I still want to pick up Forza Horizon 3 to be honest. The game just looks incredible, and I've already played it on the Xbox One in the demo, and I can tell you guys without a doubt, it plays just as well as it looks, and it looks and plays freaking awesome. So it's a lot of fun. I'm going to grab that game and a couple of these games as well. And what about you guys? You know, what are you guys looking forward to playing the next few months, coming out the next few months? Do you have any recommendations for me, and why? And what are the games you're looking forward to? You know, is there something else that I'm missing as far as first-person shooters or cool, you know, implementations of DirectX 12 or Vulkan that maybe you have on your radar that I missed? Let me know below, and appreciate you guys showing up for another video. As always, have a great week. Enjoy the hell out of these games or whatever it is you're doing. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one until then, and peace out.